Just a moment.
Anyone watching this remember when I covered a game called The Cat Lady and listed off a bunch of games that were burned into my memory because of how they looked? This is sort of the same thing, except instead of the game itself, it was this 2-page spread ad that I saw in a magazine. One which included an ominous poem in iambic pentameter, Alice accepting tea while hiding a butcher knife under the table and a saw blade encroaching behind her, and a warped Mad Hatter with a gear in his back, wingdings on his hat, and, based on his hand under the table, full awareness of what Alice was there to do. I've wanted to play American McGee's Alice for a while, but Saudi Arabia hasn't properly released the original outside of making it an afterthought add-on to the sequel, Alice Madness Returns, one which now requires essentially pirating the game to make it work. This is the same company which rejected American McGee's pitch for a third Alice game and pissed him off so much that he left game development entirely. As a younger Alice is dreaming about Wonderland, she's awakened by a house fire from which she escapes, but her parents don't. She goes into a catatonic state for years and, when presented with her old toy rabbit, retreats within her own mind to a version of Wonderland now corrupted by her psyche, which supposedly has been in decline thanks to the efforts of the Queen of Hearts. Alice's goal then is to slay the Queen of Hearts, and help out any familiar, non-aggressive creatures along the way. As this is a PC game from the year 2000 in its original form, it's not the sort that you can just plug in a PS4 controller for. I usually play with a mouse and keyboard anyway, but here it wasn't as simple as it usually is. No, it's not the platforming that I struggled with. I heard a few people gripe about this, but once I realized Alice naturally wants to move forward a bit as she jumps, there's the chance to adjust jumps a bit in midair, and smaller jumps can be handled by just pointing Alice at them, waiting for the footprints icon to appear, and pressing jump, I largely had no issues with it. No, my issue was with the default keyboard layout. ASDF movement? Fine. Having the keybind for, just as an example, climbing ropes and activating switches set to the Enter key? Not so fine. Other than getting a 25-year-old game to run on my PC with a mix of the original discs and a fan patch though, I didn't have many problems with it. From a gameplay point of view, I was satisfied playing on the normal difficulty. Even outside regular platforming, Alice handles well. Whether she's just running around on or off slippery surfaces, hitting bounce pads, floating across air jets, or climbing, swinging, or leaping off of ropes. While combat has a bit of a learning curve, I like how fast-paced and think-on-the-fly it can be. The weapon variety certainly helps in this regard. Many of the weapons, knife and croquet mallet aside, aren't traditional weapons, like the jack-in-the-box, the dice, the jacks, or the playing card. Well, okay, I know one guy who considers playing cards a weapon.
Ooh, you nasty, mon beauté rouge. Laissez-le bon temps rouler, hein?
It also helps that each weapon has a main attack and a secondary attack, which both allow for dealing with a wider range of enemies and situations and effectively expand the weapon arsenal without actually adding more weapons. Said secondary attacks are powered by the blue meter, Alice's willpower, while the red meter is her sanity, basically mana and health. Both can be refilled by enemy item drops, by which I mean they will refill both bars at the same time, though usually not that much. Because each level has some drops that are just for one bar or the other, I found myself rationing the enemy drops because I was using the secondary attacks so much. And as I was trying to keep my distance, some refills dropped out of reach or out of bounds entirely. That was to avoid getting hit by both enemies and my own attacks, as things like the croquet balls and the explosives and the demon dice can also damage Alice. That's not to say I was overly worried about dying and losing progress. It's a PC game from 25 years ago, so it allows for saving pretty much anywhere at pretty much any time. No, I was more worried about glitches. How much of this was due to the game itself or the patch job I did to get it installed and running, I don't know, but getting Alice stuck in the floor or having one of the chess piece sections break and not change Alice back did take me out of otherwise fun moments. Speaking of fun moments, regarding the story, I usually don't like the take a classic story or thing from childhood and put a dark twist on it approach. I've read more than enough creepypastas that fail miserably at this. But here, I wasn't just okay with it, I really enjoyed it. In part because the game doesn't beat the player over the head with the idea that you're really trying to dive into Alice's mind and help her overcome what's kept her in an asylum for years. It does have its moments of inconsistency though. One moment that stuck out to me is how it's built up that only Alice can handle a certain fight. And when it happens, someone else swoops in and helps out. And the dialogue does get blunt about what's happening with Alice at times.
You are racked with guilt because you survived, and you dread the prospect of a life alone.
Your family was expecting you to come to them, weren't they? Perhaps they thought you might warn them of the danger, being close to the source as you were.
But the focus is ultimately on Alice's trials working her way through Wonderland. Her dialogue and most interactions with other characters are focused on that, and not repeatedly telling Alice and the player,
Hey! You see what we did there? That was cool, huh?
It also helps that the voice work is pretty strong overall, which is to be expected given who they brought in to work on this. For example, the Caterpillar is voiced by Jerry Monroe, who some might remember better as Dr. Kaufman in Silent Hill. And then there's the Cheshire Cat, among others, who is voiced by Roger Jackson. Some might recognize him as the voice on the phone in the first few Scream movies, or, on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, Mojo Jojo from Powerpuff Girls.
It was me. It was me.
Really though, when he's voicing the Cheshire Cat, the way he basically ignores punctuation and lets the words flow into each other complements the psychedelic dreamscape world around Alice really well.
Look straight ahead or askance, whichever way you choose. You must always look in the right direction. Only a few find the way. Some don't recognize it when they do. Some don't ever want to.
That also goes for the soundtrack, which, don't be surprised if you hear me using it more in videos from now on. And of course, there's the level design. Yes, Alice is pretty linear throughout. And no, I don't care. The part of the game I enjoyed the least was the underground tunnels, the least linear and most maze-like portion. The rest of it has enough variety in its visual and level design that I didn't feel like I was doing the same thing over and over. Going from switch puzzles to floating and or appearing platform sequences, to rafting, to swimming, to the aforementioned Alice turning into chess pieces and having to move like them section, and just the right amount of boss fights sprinkled in between all of that. If a bad linear game is a straight black line, then American McGee's Alice is one of those crazy straws that keeps bending a bunch of different directions and keeps changing color throughout. I like American McGee's Alice. I recommend playing American McGee's Alice. But as I said earlier, other than finding the discs for it on eBay, you can't buy American McGee's Alice. Man, if only there was some archive on the internet where someone could find this game and the fan patch to get it running on modern hardware, or even the remastered version with widescreen and controller support.